Whether you want to refresh your living room or redecorate the guest room, a coat of paint can be the most impactful and the most economical way to achieve those goals. So here with some helpful tips, we've got Darren Voros, our contractor, back with us right now. So simple things, but if you don't master these steps, your paint job's not going to look very good.
I know. Painting is something that I think a lot of people attempt and then they do a horrible job and then they never do it again.
Right.
So I always try to tell people it can be simple, but you got to know the basics. So let's talk a little bit about it. First of all, a product, right? I always recommend getting a good paintbrush. I went to Home Depot and got these yesterday. This is like a three set of paintbrushes. It comes in 3-inch, 2.5-inch, and 2-inch.
Okay.
And you'll notice they're angled. I always like angled brushes for cutting in. I'll talk about that in a second.
Okay, perfect.
Then I found this. It's even better. It's a brush, 2 rollers, and a tray and everything. I think this is $19.
You get the whole kit.
Yeah, and it's great. And then, of course, can I hand you that too?
Yep.
And then this, I always buy these. This is a paint tray liner.
Yes.
And you notice my paint tray here. All I buy is new liners every time, so I don't have to clean out the paint tray, which saves me a lot of time. These are $1 each. They're totally worth it.
That is very smart. So this is the paint tray, and of course it's been through the ringer.
Just know that there's like 20 different kinds of those. You got to get the right one for your tray. So
got it.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And then of course I love these little things. This is a little a bucket for holding paint.
Oh, you got a handle on there.
So instead of like actually holding the paint bucket, I like to, or the paint can or whatever it is, pour a little bit in here. And it's got a magnet on the inside, so when you're not using your paintbrush, it holds the paintbrush just up above the paint and you're not getting anything in there.
I like that.
So I use this all the time, right?
Yeah, it's just easier.
First thing I see a lot of people do, they put way too much paint on their brush.
Right.
People will dunk like all the way up to like here on the paintbrush. You just want just the bottom section. That's all I want is just a little bit of paint on the bottom.
Okay.
And now the hardest thing, now I'm right-handed, so I would actually start in this corner.
Right.
But for today, I'm going to start here.
For the purposes of television.
Yeah, I'm going to try to paint the opposite way. But what I really want to do is get my brush angled. See how my brush is angled? And I'm going to now just start to follow, and I can get a straight line following there. Now I've got lots of paint on there. I would come back and I would pull that paint away. What I see people try to do is cut in like this. It's really hard to cut in because you've got this little strand at the end to try to cut in the paint. You want to use the brush, and that's why I liked angled brushes instead of the flat brushes. And so I press this down. Now I've got all this surface area that I can start to drag that along there. And I get close with my first cut in, and then I smooth that all out. And then I would come with my second time around once that dries, and then I can get right up into the last little space that needs to be cut in. So first time, I'd leave a little gap. Second time around, I'd come in, and now I would actually get right up in there and fill that space for my cut-in.
That's pretty amazing. So you haven't taped anything?
No, I don't really like to use tape on the cut-in. You can use it.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're really worried about it, I'd say tape it. If not, you can cut in, and this takes a little bit of practice. Once you get used to it, no problem.
You look like a pro. You've done it a few times before, haven't you?
I have done this a few times.
Because like no coffee, no wine. Like get serious, focus.
That's right. Yeah.
Like it's hard to get that in there.
You also have to get up in that space. So I like to be up on a ladder to make sure I can actually see what I'm cutting in.
Right. Okay. So that's the way to do it this way. Cutting in. Let's talk about painting the corners.
Corners, same thing almost, right?
Okay.
I mean, we're just getting a little bit of paint on the brush, we're taking that off, and then it's the same, it's just the opposite now. Now I'm going to start to come in and I just use the brush in the opposite direction. So I'm going to come close to that corner. Let's say I wanted to paint this wall one color and the other wall another color, right? I want to keep that. Now again, you could use painter's tape here, but I think for the time that it takes to put up the painter's tape, and it's not always perfect painter's tape, so I just like to perfect my cutting in technique and then use that instead. Okay, should we talk about using tape, since a lot of us will? Because there's a wrong way to use the tape. If you're not taping close enough, it'll bleed over. Yeah. If you take the tape off too quickly, you take the paint with it. There's different kinds of tape too,
and there's different kinds of tape.
So I've got these two are the most common, blue tape and green tape, and then there's like another type of green tape. There's a light green, a dark green.
Do they make a difference?
Yeah, it's how tacky they are.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
So the green tape actually will stick less than the blue tape. So if I was taping off the baseboard, for instance, I would use blue tape because it's not going to peel the paint off the baseboard. If I was using it to cut in on the wall, I would actually use green tape because that's going to be less abrasive in terms of
What
taking
about
it
light
off.
green tape?
Light green is even for like
less
real
tacky.
Exactly. So if it's you know, and when I'm talking about taping, basically, you know, for this I would use the blue tape. Get a nice long stretch.
Okay.
And then essentially it gives me a nice area to kind of look down the line and make sure that it's all in there.
Right.
Press it in there nice and firm, you know, and then you can kind of come off, pull that off. Now the first pass on the tape, don't put too much paint.
Okay.
Because what you want to do is you want to seal the tape first, right?
Okay.
If I do a really light pass, I'd get as much of that paint off as I can. Then I just seal the line. Now that's going to dry and it's going to seal it. Now I can come and put more paint on that later on.
Okay.
But then when I pull that off and it's nice and dry, you're just going to see that perfect line all the way down, right?
Oh, that's so good.
It's there's different techniques when it comes to tape when you want to take the tape off.
Yes.
I like to do it when it's still a little bit wet or entirely dry. If it's entirely dry, I like to take the back side of an X-Acto knife and kind of make sure that that surface is cut between the paint and the tape.
Because is there sort of a danger in taking off when it's still a bit wet that the paint will shift?
Well, it's in that gray area where if you pull it off and it's dry, sometimes you'll pull all the paint that you've just put on the wall, right?
Yes, yes.
So that's not good.
Okay, really good. It's such a delicate thing, but once you learn how the prep with
a
the
couple
painting,
little tips, and it's really easy to paint a room. What I would do here is I would go around, do all my perimeters, and then I would come in with the roller, and I'd actually roll. I'd roll the top here, right?
Yeah.
And then I'd like to do a nice sort of W pattern on the roller.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
And then I would do that, and then I see how that's got pretty good coverage. Now I just keep going over that until I get a nice, smooth finish on that paint. I can go right tight to the top there, so I'm smoothing that all out.
Great.
And then just keep coverage there.
So much to know. I think I'm just going to call you. Come over and paint my walls.